Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. At AM 630.
It is 8:37 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. There is some breaking news this morning. There were a couple of attacks yesterday against our consulates and embassies around the world. One occurred in Cairo, Egypt. The other one occurred in Benghazi, a U.S. consulate. The U.S. ambassador was there, and we have now learned this morning that during that attack, he was killed. We thought we would turn this morning to former UN Ambassador John Bolton to try to bring these events into perspective. What's going on? What should the United States do in response to this? Ambassador Bolton, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's obviously it's a sad day here when Americans serving their country are killed in the line of their duty, and I have in mind very much Tehran in 1979, looking at what happened in Benghazi and Cairo, that we're on the verge of a potential debacle here in the Middle East. I think the Obama administration's response has got to be twofold at two different levels. First response is to make sure they've done everything to protect the safety of Americans in the whole Middle East, not just the embassy and consulate and military personnel, but just think of the tens of probably hundreds of thousands of Americans who are there on business, tourism, seeing family, whatever, all of whom are potentially at risk. We don't know what's going to unfold in the next several days, but we better have our contingency planning for the worst-case situation in place. Number two, it's got to be said unambiguously to the governments of Egypt and Libya that we will not accept this happening again. I don't buy this argument that it was some popular demonstration. It's the responsibility of the host governments to protect our diplomatic facilities. If Egyptian security guards had done their job, those people never would have breached the perimeter in Cairo. And God knows they weren't peaceful demonstrators firing rocket-propelled grenades in Benghazi that killed our ambassador. The governments have a heavy responsibility for what happened, and they need to step up and do their job.
Well, help us understand, because, what is it like at a consulate or an embassy? Is it protected solely by the country where the embassy is hosted, or are there normally American soldiers or Marines there to protect those working in these embassies and consulates?
Well, there are Marine security guards at all of our embassies and a lot of our consulates, but they're very small units. They're normally enough in times of stability to protect against intruders, but it's not like it's a large detachment that can stand up to mobs in the streets. It's the responsibility of the government to protect the outer security of the embassy compounds, and that obviously did not happen either in Egypt or in Libya.
All right. The word is that these mob, they were stirred up by this video that is out on YouTube. Was made by apparently someone here in the United States and also a Christian Egyptian, and it was poking fun at the Prophet Muhammad. If a video like this can do that, just overall, stepping back, what can you do? I mean, as a government, as individuals or whatever, to really have some kind of government or something that is based in reality where people go this crazy and kill innocent people because of a video that they had nothing to do about.
Yeah, well, it would be nice to get out of the 13th century.
Yeah,
that would be a good place to start. But let's be clear, I haven't seen this video. Let's assume it's utterly and thoroughly offensive to any devout Muslim. Let's just take that for granted. What we should do is not apologize for the First Amendment exercise of freedom of speech in this country, but explain that that's what happens in a free society, that the government's not responsible for it, and that in any event it is an utterly irrational reaction to riot and use weapons as a means of protest. I think the statement issued by our embassy in Cairo yesterday just added fuel to the fire, apologizing for this. It's not the function of the government of the United States to comment on what its citizens say. It's a function of the government to defend our way of life. And you know the famous quotation attributed to Voltaire, although he may not have said it, he believed it. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. We're not going to police the speech of Americans because other people are offended. That's just not what we do. We fought for centuries in the West against blasphemy laws. That was the beginning of the concept of freedom of speech. And we're not going to go back to blasphemy laws, at least if I have anything to say about it.
Well, is it possible that, and I agree with you on the message that was sent out by the embassy in Cairo, was that a possibility of an appeasement to try and stop this because they knew something was coming and they didn't want it?
My understanding is the statement was issued before the perimeter was actually breached.
Right.
So it fails on two grounds. One, it was appeasement. You're exactly right. And two, it failed. So I think that shows what happens when you demonstrate weakness. It is the weakness that's provocative. It's not American strength that's provocative.
Really quickly, there seems to be a rift growing between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel about the timing of what Israel should do to protect its interest, given the fact that Iran seems to be getting closer and closer to developing a deliverable nuclear weapon.
Yes, absolutely. And the notion that there wasn't time to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu is ridiculous. It is a slap in the face. It's a signal to Iran and the rest of the region that Israel is alone. And at precisely the moment our embassies are being attacked, our ambassador was killed, to snub an ally like this just says to our adversaries in the region that they have a free hand. I think the president's got a very limited amount of time here to demonstrate a little leadership from the front. Where the situation in the region will worsen dramatically.
Well, he's very busy. He's apparently not attending his daily intelligence briefing.
Yeah, that was a shocking revelation, but not surprising. I've said for 3.5 years the president doesn't care about national security. He doesn't think the world is terribly threatening. I'm still waiting for the reaction to the events of the last 24 hours. I think the president needs to have time to think this through, but I think a weak reaction, a failure to demonstrate American power and resolve will see this spread throughout the region. And again, I come back to Tehran in 1979, that if we're not careful here, we're going to see a repetition of that crisis, which, of course, was a major factor contributing to the destruction of the Jimmy Carter administration.
Ambassador John Bolton, we really do appreciate 2 days in a row. We really appreciate you joining us. But with breaking news like this, we really appreciate you coming.
No, thank you for having me.